Welcome back. In Part 1, we learned that the Kansas City Chiefs began life as the Dallas Texans. After 3 years, the team moved to Kansas City and were renamed, not after Native American leaders, but after the mayor of Kansas City, H. Roe Bartle, whose nickname was Chief. Almost immediately, this subtle change in identity, being named after a political leader, seemed to alter the course of their existence. A player, Stone Johnson, was injured in preseason of their first year and died after their first game. This death uncannily seemed to foretell the death of John Kennedy a few months later. 2 other deaths of Chiefs players throughout the Johnson administration seemed to continually remind us that Kennedy's crown was stolen. And then, in Super Bowl IV, the Chiefs' victory seemed to foretell the Watergate break-in 888 days later, and Nixon's resignation on 8/8 of 74, just 3 days shy of 4 years and 7 months, a mirror of 74. Yet another crown stolen by an intelligence organization of the government to serve as bookends to the Johnson administration. And then, in the early days of the year 2000, the death of another Chiefs player, Derek Thomas, would foretell the theft of a crown in the 2000 election debacle between Al Gore and George W. Bush. All was quiet until the 2019 season. The Chiefs would once again return to the Super Bowl and win, and, as before, incredibly predict the theft of a crown for Donald Trump in the 2020 election that occurred just 9 months later. Super Bowl 58, however, would push the paranormal into overdrive. Indeed, it seemed as if perhaps witchcraft or a deal with the devil was in play, with the deaths of 3 Chiefs fans before the Super Bowl and 1 death afterward, serving as potential satanic sacrifices of sorts. And that brings us to here. As we mentioned earlier, Tom Brady was the quarterback for the New England Patriots for 2 decades, and then for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for his final 3 years. His jersey number at both teams was 12, which sums to 3. His wife at the time, Gisele Bündchen, was a self-described good witch. She provided Mr. Brady with rituals to perform before his games. She also would tell him when he would win and when he would lose. Now, whether you believe any of this is ultimately irrelevant. All that matters is that they believed it. We each have the power to manifest our own reality. Brady and Bündchen were the paranormal power pair of their own reality. Sadly, they were divorced in 2022 after 13 years of marriage. Like the number 3, it is a very common number in this analysis, as we will soon see. 3 months after Norma Hunt died, a new First Lady of Football arrived, Taylor Swift, when she began dating Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. Both were 33 at the time. It's my belief that this is where the new paranormal power pair enters the narrative to offset the Tom Brady-Gisele Bündchen witchcraft couple. You see, Taylor Swift adores special numbers. They are everything to her, especially the number 13. It's her favorite number. There is at least one video floating about the interweb in which she brags about being born on the 13th, turning 13 on Friday the 13th, having her first album reach gold in 13 weeks. Her first number 1 song had a 13-second intro, and that whenever she's won an award, she's always been seated in the 13th row. She has stated that numbers rule her world. On 4 February 2024, just 1 week before the Super Bowl, Swift won her 13th Grammy. And of course, she goes out of her way to specifically schedule things to occur based on sacred numbers or auspicious dates. For example, in the 2023 season, she specifically planned things so that she would carefully attend 13 games, no more, no less, consisting of 9 regular season and the 4 postseason games. Swift's love interest is Travis Kelce. His rookie year for the Chiefs was 2013, and he was drafted in the 3rd round. As you can see, the numbers 13 and 3 played a defining role in his beginning with the Chiefs. He is the other half of the amazing Mahomes-Kelce duo. They each have the uncanny ability to read each other and perform amazing plays. In 2023, Kelce reportedly accepted $20 million to become Pfizer's latest vaccine whore, or snake oil salesman. This action directly seeks to link us back to the COVID-19 scamdemic and its origins in 2017, as we will later see. Could this have been the moment when Kelce may have sold his soul to the devil? Immediately prior to Super Bowl 58, Taylor Swift was in Tokyo, Japan, for a series of concerts. She reportedly made a mad dash 13-hour flight to Las Vegas to be in time for the big game. Japan is known as the land of the rising sun, and it is located along the Ring of Fire. The latter is the location where 90% of the earthquakes and some of the largest volcanoes to have ever erupted reside. Interestingly, a solar eclipse produces its own ring of fire during totality, called the corona, which I link to the coronavirus in my video series on the symbolism of Donald Trump. In any event, from a symbolic perspective, in order to reach the game, Swift had to fly east in an attempt to reach the rising sun. Similarly, Lucifer is known as the morning star or the light bringer. So, in essence, from a purely symbolic standpoint, Swift went to the land of the rising sun, the only nation nuked in a war thus far, and brought back the sacred light of division from the splitting of the atom, Lucy's light, to the game. And technically, she even brought that light back through time to the game as she crossed the international date line to get there. Never ignore the symbolism, and there is certainly a massive amount of symbolism by this action alone. While there seems to be no end of interviews with Kelce's family regarding how normal and down-to-earth Taylor Swift acted around them, the sad fact of the matter is that her friends, seated with her during the Super Bowl, were making what some would call satanic gestures and were adorned with upside-down crosses. Was it totally innocent, or was there, perhaps, a darker purpose? As someone who has investigated this kind of stuff for decades, it smells of the typical Freemasonic Judaic fertility ritual. If that's the case, Kelce and Swift are merely the latest token pair stepping into the role of Adam and Eve to usher in the replacement for mankind. If this is the case, if it is indeed a massive fertility ritual, we need to return to that point in time when Allegiant Stadium, site of Super Bowl 58, was conceived in 2017. As mentioned, construction on Allegiant Stadium began in late 2017. There was a whole host of incredible events that occurred that turbulent year. For example, we had Trump's first inauguration. We had the Great Eclipse, a huge contributor to the fertility aspect. We had the Las Vegas shooting. And we had the totally ignored beginnings of COVID-19, all taking place in 2017. And believe it or not, they are all linked. First of all, as revealed in my ongoing video series on the symbolism of Donald Trump, in the 33rd week of the year, and 30 weeks and 3 days after Trump's inauguration, we experienced the great eclipse over the continental United States. This is important for the incredible symbolism it reveals. You see, in a solar eclipse, the moon steals the light of the sun, especially its crown or corona. If you remember, Trump was and is derogatorily labeled the Orange Man by the media. And in my books and videos, I claim he is reprising the role of Christ as an anti- or reflective Christ. In other words, he was playing the role of the sun, not just the Son of God, but the sun up in the sky. This event occurred in the first year of his presidency. In the last year of his first presidency, a mysterious coronavirus would materialize, and, as expected, the Orange Man's crown would be stolen, just like the light of the orange sun was stolen as he stupidly looked up without protective glasses and watched, and just like darkness blanketed the land during the crucifixion of Christ when his crown was stolen. None of us knew at the time that we were seeing his future. Beginnings and endings, mirror events. The elite oligarchs know all about the mirror, and they were giving us all a preview of events they were planning. Again, an elaborate fertility ritual was taking place, which, believe it or not, was centered around replaying the crucifixion of Christ with an ignorant Trump, the monarch of the moment. Now, consider what we have seen and ponder the role that the chief symbolically played in not just predicting, but actually installing a retooled chief. The great eclipse of 2017 had the moon stealing the light, the corona or crown, from the orange sun. In 2020, the same thing happened to Trump with the invention of the coronavirus, a plague specifically designed to steal the corona/crown from the Orange Man. Then, 4 years later, we have Taylor Swift swiftly traveling from the land of the rising sun, again the only nation nuked in a war, to bring back the sacred light of division to Super Bowl 58 in 2024. The very year that Trump would be reelected and the crown of sacred light returned. She essentially played Lucifer, the light bringer, bringing the dark light, for lack of a better word. Trump was reelected in the 39th week. 39 is the number of birth or rebirth, as it refers to the typical gestation period of a human fetus. It's a key number of man. Unfortunately, if my theory is correct about a Chiefs Super Bowl win predicting a stolen crown, then that would mean that Trump's win was just as much of a coup as was Biden's. Did everything I reveal collectively conspire to return him to office after being suitably equipped with the dark light? Was it Trump, perhaps, that made the deal with the devil? Yeah, I know, you are skeptical, but we're not done yet. So how did COVID start in 2017, and how are events that year linked to the Chiefs? First, Moderna's patent for the COVID-19 spike protein sequence was approved in the third month of 2017, 13 days prior to spring. And second, 333 days after Trump took office, on 19 December 2017, news outlets reported that government officials with the National Institutes of Health had lifted a ban on funding research into making pathogens more lethal, i.e., gain-of-function research. The decision specifically lifted a funding pause put in place 3 years earlier, another 3, on experimenting with the viruses influenza, severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS, and yet another set of 3. This was in Anthony Fauci's 33rd year as head of NIAID at NIH. Yep, those 3s just continue to pile up, don't they? But don't worry, I'm assured it's just a coincidence. If you want to learn more about this, check out part 2 of my video series on Trump. 42 days after the Great Eclipse, the Las Vegas shooting took place, and then 43 days after that, the groundbreaking for Allegiant Stadium took place on 13 November 2017. And, coincidentally, it just happened to take place 43 days prior to Christmas. Not only that, it strangely took place at 1900 in the evening, after sunset. More precisely, it took place 147 minutes after sunset, if my research is correct. How many groundbreaking ceremonies have you ever seen that took place after dark? Darkness is the time when the moon typically rules, and usually is indicative of a dark or otherwise satanic influence. Darkness is the time when we do things we wouldn't normally do in the light of day. Those 147 minutes from sunset to the start of the groundbreaking are divisible by 3, 49 times. Does that number seemingly foretell one of the future participants to the very first Super Bowl that the Allegiant Stadium would eventually host 6 years later, the San Francisco 49ers? Hold that thought for a second. In the 13th week since the Las Vegas shooting, one of the construction workers working on the new Allegiant Stadium allegedly buried a Kansas City Chiefs Kingdom flag where they believed the 50-yard line would be, and it was supposedly encased in concrete. A news article and Facebook post went viral at the time and had many Raiders fans very upset. A horribly written follow-up article from just before Super Bowl 58 seemed to deny that it was ever buried. Either way, there was a Facebook post on this incident, or lack thereof, and a subsequent news article from Las Vegas back in December of 2017 that served to uncannily identify the other team in the future Super Bowl that would be hosted at that particular stadium. In perfect mirror fashion, both participants were now identified, one overtly, the Chiefs, and one covertly, the 49ers, more than 6 years beforehand. One is linked to the moon, the Chiefs, as the flag was buried in the dark, while the other represents the sun, the 49ers, being associated with the number of minutes after sunset, and linked to San Francisco, which is named for St. Francis of Assisi, a man who reportedly was the first to bear the bleeding wounds of Christ, known as stigmata, and who was credited with the creation of the nativity scene, thus effectively telegraphing the birth and death of Christ. Remember that the Chiefs started winning Super Bowls when COVID arrived in the election year of 2020, when Trump's crown was stolen, and Super Bowl 58 took place in the very year when Trump would see his crown returned. Mirror echoes. Plus, Travis Kelce was reportedly paid $20 million to pimp the shots. The Chiefs would then lose the following year when Trump became the first sitting president to attend a Super Bowl. Trump was the new representative of the retooled sun, whose light was now of a dark and divided nature, having been brought back from Japan, the only nation nuked in a war, by Taylor Swift when she played Lucifer. As you can see, the Las Vegas shooting took place at the virtual midpoint between the eclipse and the stadium groundbreaking. Likewise, the stadium groundbreaking took place at the precise midpoint between the Las Vegas shooting and Christmas. Why? It is my belief that the shooting itself was staged by the elite as a necessary blood sacrifice to bless their future endeavors, specifically the future COVID scamdemic that would steal Trump's crown, and then to consecrate the creation of a massive round stadium to eventually serve as an altar, introduce the next solar eclipse over the United States, and return Trump's crown to him with alterations. Consider that the attendees of the Harvest Festival were shot from above, from a gold-clad building, in the shape of a trinity, to reference the heavens, in particular, the sun/sun, while the coronavirus, itself linked to the solar corona stolen by the moon during an eclipse, led to people being shot in a different manner, with a vax, lest they die. The number of deaths that took place at the time, 58, pointed to the very Super Bowl that Allegiant Stadium would eventually host, although several other deaths linked to the shooting would occur over the subsequent years. That means that in 2017, we knew the particular Super Bowl number and the future participants that would eventually play in the very stadium that was being constructed. I know, it's just a coincidence. As I reported earlier, construction on Allegiant Stadium was completed on 31 July 2020, just 13 days shy of a full 33 months following its groundbreaking on 13 November 2017, and in the third year. This was also 33 weeks following the announcement from Wuhan, China, of a strange viral outbreak on 12 December 2019 that would eventually become COVID-19. That date, 12 December 2019, is a summed 333 day, month, and year, and the very same calendar day that the Chiefs' Mac Lee Hill became injured in 1965, 54 years earlier, which itself is the number of the third Super Bowl that the Chiefs would play. Mac Lee Hill became injured 13 months and 3 days prior to the very first Super Bowl. Those special numbers just keep showing up. Ultimately, both the stadium and COVID-19 shared the same conception in 2017, and the same time of birth, relatively speaking, around 2020. But why link a stadium with the scamdemic? If I'm correct, the entire point of Allegiant Stadium was to host Super Bowl 58 on the 58th day prior to the second great eclipse over the United States on 8 April 2024. That latter day and month was precisely 33 calendar weeks after 21 August, the date of the great eclipse in 2017. Something that can only take place in a leap year, which 2024 was, with the 2017 eclipse itself taking place in the 33rd week of the year. What are the odds, my fellow souls, of two eclipses taking place over the continental United States, forming a cross over the center of the country, with the first taking place 33 weeks into the year, and the second taking place 33 calendar weeks later? They have to be staggering. In any event, the Super Bowl itself needed to be in place to usher in the return of the crown to Trump, so that he could finish the role of Antichrist and lead the Christian nation to the crucifixion. A crucifixion at 33. Again, see my videos on the symbolism of Trump if you want to learn more. Now, let's do a deeper dive into this hypothetical fertility aspect. What was the primary purpose of Allegiant Stadium? To be the home field for the Las Vegas Raiders and the UNLV Rebels football teams, right? Ergo, it is to be used for football. That's the key. How so? A solar eclipse occurs when one divine circle in the sky overlaps another divine circle in the sky. In essence, they join with each other. They merge. They can even be said to procreate. When two circles overlap, they briefly create a shape known as the womb of the universe. Known as the Vesica Piscis, everything in existence springs from its ubiquitous form. Indeed, it is one of the oldest symbols known to man and a universal symbol of fertility. The Vesica Piscis, or Pisces, is formed by two identical circles overlapping each other so that the center of each lay on the other's circumference. Symbolically, the intersection of each circle depicts the union of the feminine and masculine energies, while the shape that emerges from these overlapping energies results in the product of their union, the sacred divine child. This particular shape just happens to be in the form of a fish, when euphemistically used by Christianity, or the feminine vulva. Of course, it also just happens to match the look of a football. Are you paying attention now? Within the area of the vesica piscis, you can have 4 equal circular segments and either 2 equilateral triangles or 4 right triangles. One segment and one equilateral triangle represents a sector, 1/6 of a circle, 60 degrees. It is a cornerstone of modern geometry, one of the most important aspects, at least for the terms of this presentation, lay in the height to width ratio of the overlapping divine child symbol itself. It is precisely 265/153, or 1.7320261, which is essentially the square root of the number 3. Yet again, the number 3 rises to prominence. What's also interesting with that ratio is that vesica piscis literally means bladder of a fish, and 153 is the exact number of fish Jesus was miraculously said to have caught in the Gospel of John. As I repeatedly state in my books, the Bible is a science textbook, couched as parable and metaphor. Now, consider the sacred form of the vesica piscis, the womb of the universe, and how the shape of the overlapping circles creates the divine child in the guise of a football, and apply it to the game of football itself. It's all about protecting the ball, isn't it? Sort of like it was a tiny infant. Or perhaps it's the chosen sacred seed necessary to bring about the tiny infant. It's all about trying to invade the territory of the opposing team so that the seed can be implanted and score. The only thing needed is for the ball itself to cross an imaginary line in the end zone. The whole thing seems to be about the intense battle of semen to be the one player to reach the sacred egg so that rebirth can occur. Crossing the imaginary line is analogous to the sperm penetrating the egg. Even the uprights in the end zones seem to mimic a woman's legs when having sex or giving birth. And of course, the teams themselves are ranked as seed. Ponder carefully, my fellow souls, just exactly what we have been programmed to love. If there is one sport people seem to love as much as sex, it is football. Now you know why. It is designed to mimic sex. When coupled with the perfection of the golden ratio and the numbers in play, 5, 8, and 3, the fertility aspect of this particular game, Super Bowl 58, becomes quite apparent. Super Bowl 58 was played 11 February 2024. February the 11th is the 42nd day of the year, just like the Las Vegas shooting took place on the 42nd day after the Great Eclipse of 2017. That date was also 3.53 years after the stadium opening. Or, stated another way, 42 months and 11 days after the opening. Yeah, the 42nd day of the year and 42 months after opening, to harken back to the Las Vegas shooting on the 42nd day after the eclipse. I'm sure it was all just a crazy coincidence. But here's the really haunting aspect of this. There are 57 complete days between Super Bowl 58 and the solar eclipse on 8 April 2024. If you remember, Mackley Hill's injury back in 1965 took place precisely 57 weeks prior to Super Bowl I. So what, you ask? He was a chief, analogous to a king, and his name was Hill. What famous king died on a hill when the sky darkened? That's right, Christ. Consider, during surgery on the third day, Hill's temperature suddenly spiked to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the mirror opposite of an eclipse, when the light is taken. The roles reversed. Instead of cooling, there was heat. But yet the story still played the same. Hill's light, his life, was taken in a manner similar to Christ, and the manner the light is taken from the sun during a solar eclipse. Indeed, the entire sequence of events was reversed. The eclipse in the past, realized as Hill's death, took place beforehand, separated by a span of 57, and then Super Bowl I would occur, which the Chiefs would play, but lose, while in the future, Super Bowl 58 would occur first, the Chiefs would win, and the eclipse would occur 57 full days later. The same sequence of events was replaying again, with Hill in the role of the one being eclipsed. Somehow, both events became inescapably tied together. Then, of course, there was Mackley Hill's death before the first Super Bowl, and Stone Johnson's death after the first Chiefs game. These two are mirror opposites, and, like Hill, Johnson was linked to Christ via his link to Kennedy. When included with my other research, it is very likely that Hill's death was the result of the Chiefs' victory in Super Bowl 58, 58 years into the future. As unbelievable as this sounds, these are how the mirrors in time work, and such action is scientifically feasible. And if this did indeed happen, it shows just how critically important the events in 2024 were. Hill's death could have been an echo, like being blown off your feet from an explosion a block away, from the future events that were radiating both into the future and into the past from their origination point in 2024. I have several such examples in my books, but I digress, and you are very likely ready to stop listening to such absolute insanity anyway, if you haven't already. In any event, given the overt fertility aspect of football and the Vesica Piscis, is it any wonder there is so much occult symbolism on display during the halftime shows at a Super Bowl? The halftime show for Super Bowl 58 was no different. It featured the music of Usher, someone who was rising to stardom in the late 90s and early 2000s. Of course, that was several decades ago. Why not have someone more contemporary do their show instead of Usher? Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that he has multiple tattoos on his body, particularly his head, devoted to sacred geometry. Indeed, he even has an all-seeing eye of providence tattooed under his chin. And of course, it may also have something to do with his name, Usher. Like maybe this particular event, this satanic Super Bowl, was meant to usher in something very dark. Was it foretelling the return of a crown for an Antichrist, Trump, and the associated destruction of the Christian nation, and by extension, Christianity itself? Think about it, my fellow souls. An even older country star from an earlier generation, Reba McEntire, was tasked with singing the national anthem to open the game. Reba secured her first recording contract way back in 1975 and is known as the Queen of Country. With her flowing red hair and her thick Southern accent, I can't help but get the impression of Eve in Eden. If correct, this tends to take us back to the beginning of the Bible. Reba is short for the Hebrew Rebecca, and generally means to tie or bind, something women naturally provide for our souls, the ability to bind or anchor them to a body. Her last name, McEntire, seems to refer to the son of all, or everyone, the entirety of mankind, of which Eve was the mother. One possible meaning of her complete name could be the queen who binds us all. Intriguingly, McIntyre's TV series, Reba, began just 3 weeks and 3 days after the events of 11 September 2001. Yep, another 3-3. Here we go again. The beginning was sung by Reba, which takes us back to Eden. The halftime show takes us to some midpoint, which ushers in the end. A white female portraying Eve, who took the sacred knowledge by eating the forbidden fruit, becomes a black male sporting esoteric secrets in tattoos. A literal darkening and mirroring of the soul has taken place. Perhaps Usher's all-seeing eye tattoo actually references the United States itself, since the eye is a major part of its iconography. And finally, the end of the game has Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift hugging on each other and representing what? A new beginning with a brainwashed and compliant youth? An ending in which the elite, the chiefs, are victorious and cheering crowds lauding their greatness? Or is it cheering the return of one particular chief, a president that, himself, is uncontrollably playing the role of Christ? Check out my other video series on the symbolism of Donald Trump. And this brings us back to Taylor Swift. Just like the number 3 would define the Chiefs' existence, Taylor Swift's favorite number, 13, would seem to dominate Super Bowl 58. Consider the Super Bowl number and the number of people initially who died in the Las Vegas shooting, 58, sums to 13. The number 49 of the 49ers sums to 13. The 49ers quarterback, Brock Purdy, wears jersey number 13. The day and month of the Super Bowl, 11 February, sums to 13. The Chiefs took the lead in the third quarter of the game when the score was 13-10. During overtime of Super Bowl 58, both teams had 13 plays each. The day of the groundbreaking for Allegiant Stadium was the 13th. In the 13th week following the Las Vegas shooting, one of the construction workers working on the new Allegiant Stadium allegedly buried a Kansas City Chiefs Kingdom flag where they believed the 50-yard line would be. The address of Allegiant Stadium was changed to 3333 Al Davis Way. Al Davis was the coach and former owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, who died in 2011. Interestingly, Super Bowl 58 was played in the 13th year following his death. The day Allegiant Stadium opened, 31, is a mirror of 13. This was 13 days shy of the full 33 months since the groundbreaking. Playoffs for the 2023 NFL season began 13 January 2024. The 2023 championship games for both the NFC and AFC were played by opposing teams that were rated 1 seed and 3 seed to collectively produce 13. The very same thing happened at the Super Bowl. The opposing teams were 1 seed and 3 seed. The Chiefs had 11 consecutive winning seasons leading up to the Super Bowl 58 that began in 2013. Since all of this seems to link back to the Great Eclipse, 13 is the number of orbits around the Earth that the moon makes in an Earth year. And since women were designed to laud the moon, while men laud the sun, 13 is naturally the number of typical menstrual cycles per year. This links back to the fertility aspect. And mentioned previously, 4 February 2024, just 1 week before the Super Bowl, Swift won her 13th Grammy, and she had a 13-hour flight from Japan to get to the game. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen were the paranormal power pair of their own reality who may have influenced the outcome of past Super Bowls. Sadly, the Brady and Bündchen power pair ended when they were divorced in 2022 after 13 years of marriage. Precisely 13 weeks after the Super Bowl, on 12 May 2024, Taylor Swift performed the 87th concert of her Eras Tour in Nanterre, France, a suburb of Paris. The first item of note, and most blatant, was the fact that Travis Kelce was present at this concert. Kelce's jersey number, playing for the Chiefs, is 87, a number divisible by 3, 29 times. 87 is also 13 short of 100, or 13% short. Swift came out on stage during the 1989 segment of the show wearing an outfit of red and gold, the Chiefs' colors. It is said that the album 1989 is Kelce's favorite. Since this was precisely 13 weeks after the Super Bowl, and 13 is Swift's favorite number, and since this was the fourth and final concert at Nanterre, and there were 4 postseason games in 2024 for the Chiefs, it would stand to reason that this particular date was meant to reference the Super Bowl. But why? Well, if that date and the concert number were so carefully chosen, so too was the location. In other words, somebody was giving us a broader message. Swift's concert was held at the La Défense Arena in Nanterre. La Défense is named after a famous sculpture that commemorates the siege of Paris during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. As would be expected for this investigation, the number 3 is forefront, with the sculpture featuring 3 figures. Foremost among them is a brave woman standing proud and defiant in the uniform of the National Guard. She is brandishing a sword and wearing a crown, as if she is a queen. The official excuse is that she represents Paris itself. Let me just say that I find that explanation rather dubious at best. Then there is a male soldier that seems to be hiding behind her, reaching into his pouch to load his gun. And finally, there is a sad young woman behind. I find it ironic that Swift would choose to honor her boyfriend in an arena named La Défense when Kelce is a member of the offensive line. But let's just keep that fact and the strong queen in the sculpture in the back of our minds for now. Nanterre, France is unique in that it may have represented the earliest settlement of what eventually became Paris. Nanterre means enduring sacred shrine or place. Someone wants us to know that origins are at the heart of the message. This can somewhat be confirmed by the fact that Paris used to be the home of the prime meridian for the world before it was moved 2.333 degrees west. Just as Paris essentially splits France down the middle, it also split the world down the middle, with the longitude being set at 0 degrees. The Paris meridian is still believed by some to remain the esoteric or occult meridian used by secret societies like the Freemasons behind the scenes. In other words, it adeptly represents division, or the division of the world. So, Taylor Swift not only symbolically brought back the sacred light of division, the splitting of the atom, when she played Lucifer the Lightbringer and made a mad dash from Japan to Las Vegas in time for Super Bowl 58. But precisely 13 weeks later, she would also be in the very city that served the role of division for the world with the Paris Meridian. In this case, it was almost as if she was personally carrying the Olympic torch. And this brings us to the next intriguing event. The 33rd edition of the modern Olympics kicked off in Paris, France on 26 July 2024, 76 days after Swift's concert in Nanterre. 7 plus 6 is 13. Again, everything she does is timed around the number 13. As we learned in another video, the Olympics began 13 days after Trump was shot on the 13th of July, with the alleged gunman being declared dead 13 minutes after he was shot in the head. The opening ceremony of this particular Olympics can adeptly be described as divisive, since it involved a Christian-bashing take on Da Vinci's Last Supper painting that included, among others, transgenders and lesbians. All of this was clearly by design. Whether Taylor Swift was simply trying to worship the number 13 personally and the other sacred numbers, or whether there were esoteric experts at work in laying out her concert schedule, it simply cannot be denied that this was all manufactured. Hell, even the moon rose on the day of her final concert in Paris at 9:11 in the morning. Yet again, we see those sacred numbers associated with the moon and the final acts of the crucifixion as portrayed on 9/11. But was it satanic? You be the judge. And this brings us to the end of Part 2. In Part 3, we complete our analysis. See you there. If you found this topic interesting, please check out my other videos and my books. My website is www.mastersofthemirror.com. Thanks.